In this video, I will calculate the expected return and standard deviation on a portfolio of two assets when 80% is invested in warm and cozy and 20% is invested in quiet and sound. And in this case, the correlation coefficient between the return on the two assets will be 0.5, which makes the calculation a lot more annoying because we have to use the long formula for the standard deviation. Okay, as usual, the expected return, I hope, is pretty straightforward and you're getting used to that by now, but it's going to be 80% times the expected return on the first security plus 20%. So the weight on the first security times the return on the expected return on the first security plus the weight on the second security times the expected return on the second security. Okay, so I think this one hopefully is pretty straightforward. And sorry, I hit divided by 1, so I didn't divide it, so I just hit 1 to cancel that out. So this is this part here, and I add to that, so I'll store that as 1, and I add to that 0.2 times 12. And the expected return in this case will be 8.8%. Okay. So this part hopefully is pretty straightforward. This is the part that this is the reason that I did all this video, so I could do the standard deviation calculation because they're a little bit more messy and difficult. In this case, because the correlation coefficient is 0.5, there is no way to simplify this. We're stuck having to calculate it the long way. So we need to take the weight on the first security. We're going to call that warm and cozy, and square it. We need to multiply that by the standard deviation of that security, warm and cozy, squared. We then need to add the weight on the second security, quiet and sound, and square that, and then multiply it by the standard deviation of warm and cozy squared. I should not make it unreadable though. Okay. Then I need to add to that 2 times the correlation coefficient between the return on the two security times the weight on the first security times the weight on the second security times the standard deviation on the first security times the standard deviation on the second security. I kind of ran out of place to write that. It is a pretty big equation. Okay. I recommend doing this step by step in your calculator by using the store and recall function. So I do 0.2 squared times 12 squared. That gives me this value for this here. I'll store that as 1. Then I do 0.2 squared times 22 squared, and I'll store that as 2. And then I do this last part here. I just noticed that 2 times 0.05 is just 1, so I'll just replace these two by 1, right? So it's going to be 1 times 80% times 20% times 12, the standard deviation on the first security, times 22, the standard deviation on the second security, and I'll put that under store 3. Then I'm just going to add store 3, store 2, and store 1 together by using the recall function. And then I need to take the square root of all of that. So you can just hit square root here. And we would get a standard deviation of 12.4. Okay. And that would be the answer to this question here.